Anthropic just filed to go public at a near $1 trillion valuation. If Claude or Claude Code is in your stack, the company that controls your tools is about to answer to Wall Street every 90 days. Here's what happened. Anthropic confidentially submitted a draft S1 to the SEC today, June 1st. That's the registration document that starts the IPO process. The company behind Claude, the model, the API, Claude Code, Claude Co-work, Claude Security, all of it is preparing to become a publicly traded company. The number of shares and the price haven't been set yet, but the train has left the station. The scale is hard to wrap your head around. Anthropic's revenue run rate just passed $47 billion. 5 months ago, at the end of 2025, it was $9 billion. That's 5 times growth in 5 months. Their Series H funding round closed 4 days ago. $65 billion at a $965 billion valuation. That makes Anthropic the most valuable startup on the planet, worth more than OpenAI. Anthropic was founded in 2021 by Dario Amodei and a group of former OpenAI researchers who left over disagreements about AI safety. For years, people called them the underdog, the safety-first alternative to OpenAI's move fast philosophy. That story is over. They're now the most valuable private company on the planet, and they're heading to public markets at a speed nobody predicted. So why should you care? Because when the company that builds your AI tools goes public, the incentives shift in ways that directly affect your workflow, your wallet, and your ability to ship. Right now, Anthropic can afford to invest in safety research, give developers generous free tiers, and ship features that help individual coders. A public company answers to shareholders every quarter. Those shareholders want revenue growth, expanding margins, and customer lock-in. The decisions that make those numbers look good on an earnings call are not always the decisions that make your life easier as a developer. This isn't speculation. We've watched it happen with every major platform company that's gone public. The pattern is consistent and predictable. Let's walk through what actually happened and what it means. The filing itself is confidential, which is standard for major tech IPOs. We won't see the detailed financials until later in the process. But here's what we know from the outside. Anthropic raised a $65 billion Series H round on May 28th, led by Altimeter Capital, Dragoneer, Green Oaks, and Sequoia Capital. That pushed their post-money valuation to $965 billion. To put that in perspective, that's more than most Fortune 100 companies, and it happened in less than 5 years from founding. Think about that timeline. This company didn't exist 5 years ago. Now it's worth nearly $1 trillion. That's not normal company growth. That's the kind of velocity you see when a platform shift is happening and one company is positioned right at the center of it. Then today, the S1 filing, the timing is not random. We're in the middle of the hottest IPO season in tech history. SpaceX is going public on June 12th at a $2 trillion valuation. That would be the largest IPO ever. And Anthropic has a deal with SpaceX where they pay around $15 billion a year to use SpaceX data centers for compute infrastructure. Think about that for a second. The company that runs your AI models is spending $15 billion a year on infrastructure from a company that's about to stage the biggest IPO in history at the same time. The compute economics here are tangled in ways we've never seen. OpenAI isn't far behind. They raised $122 billion in March at an $852 billion valuation. Everyone expects them to file IPO paperwork soon. So the two biggest AI labs in the world are both racing to Wall Street, and there's a narrow window to get these deals done before market conditions shift. There's also Mythos, the model Anthropic previewed back in April. During testing, Mythos found thousands of high-severity security bugs in software. Anthropic kept access restricted while those bugs get fixed. Now reports say the EU's cybersecurity agency is getting access to Mythos. For developers, this is a model that could audit your entire code base for vulnerabilities automatically. For a public company, it's also a product with massive enterprise revenue potential. You can bet that a public Anthropic will monetize this aggressively. Now let's get concrete. What does a public Anthropic actually mean for you, the developer building a game, shipping a product, paying for API calls every day? First, API pricing. Public companies need to show expanding margins. If the API you call 1,000 times a day isn't profitable enough, the price goes up. We've already seen this pattern with cloud infrastructure. AWS raises prices on the services customers are locked into. Google Cloud does the same thing. Once you've built your MPC dialogue system or your procedural generation pipeline on top of the Anthropic API, switching costs are enormous. A public company knows this and prices accordingly. Second, feature prioritization shifts. Right now, an Anthropic ships tools that help individual developers. Claude Code is a terminal agent for coders. The API has generous free tiers for experimentation, but a public company answers to institutional investors who care about enterprise contracts worth 6 and 7 figures. The features that help a solo dev ship a game faster compete for engineering resources against the features that close Fortune 500 deals. Over time, the enterprise features win. They always do. Third, safety research becomes a budget line. Anthropic built its entire brand on being the safety-first AI company. They published research, they were transparent about risks, they built safety into their products from the ground up. But safety research doesn't directly generate revenue. On an earnings call, some analyst will ask why Anthropic is spending hundreds of millions on research that doesn't move the revenue needle. Dario Amodi will give a thoughtful answer about long-term value and responsible scaling. But the pressure is real. Public companies optimize for what they can measure and report quarterly. Safety research pays off over years and decades. That mismatch is a fundamental tension, and it's one that every safety-focused company faces when it goes public. We've seen this with biotech companies, with pharmaceutical companies, with any organization whose mission extends beyond the next quarter. Fourth, expect lock-in to accelerate. Public companies need to demonstrate to investors that customers can't easily leave. Watch for deeper integration between Claude Code, Claude Cowork, the API, and the marketplace. The easier it is to use the full Anthropic stack together, the harder it becomes to rip any single piece out. This isn't malicious, it's just how public company incentives work. Your dependency is their competitive moat. Let me map out the Anthropic product ecosystem so you can see exactly where the lock-in points are. At the center, you've got Claude, the model family itself, including Opus, Salte, and Haiku. Then Claude Code, the terminal agent that reads and edits your code base. Claude Cowork, their team collaboration tool. Claude Security, which scans for vulnerabilities. The API, which powers any application you build. The marketplace for plugins and connectors. Claude Enterprise for large organizations, and now Claude Design, which launched in April for visual work. Each product makes the others more valuable. Claude Code works best with Claude models. The API uses the same models and shares contexts. Security scans code that Claude Code writes, which means the more you use code, the more value you get from security. The marketplace adds capabilities that keep you inside the ecosystem rather than reaching for external tools. That's the platform flywheel, and it's genuinely powerful. A public company will optimize relentlessly for that flywheel because it's what investors want to see on a slide deck during an investor day. They'll point to integration depth as a competitive advantage, and they'll be right. But it also means the free tier gets thinner over time. The pricing gets more complex with more tiers and more add-ons. The switching costs get higher because your workflow becomes deeply embedded in a specific tool chain, and the product decisions start serving the needs of the quarterly earnings report, not the needs of the solo developer trying to ship a game on a weekend. This is the trade-off. You get a better integrated product, you give up flexibility. Now, here's the part that gets genuinely weird. Anthropic pays SpaceX $15 billion a year for data center capacity. SpaceX is Elon Musk's company. Musk just lost his lawsuit against OpenAI. A judge threw it out because he waited too long to file. His own AI product, Grok, is reportedly falling behind. And SpaceX is about to go public on June 12th at $2 trillion. So you have Anthropic, the company behind Claude, paying billions to Musk's company for the compute they need to run Claude. Musk's own AI product competes with Claude. Both companies are going public within weeks of each other. The politics of AI compute just got very, very personal, and it gets more entangled. OpenAI is preparing their own IPO. Microsoft, which owns GitHub Copilot, just switched Copilot to token-based billing that's making developers furious. Costs are jumping 10 to 60 times for some users. The same Microsoft that invested in OpenAI is now squeezing developers on Copilot pricing right as Anthropic goes public. The entire AI tooling market is becoming a battleground between two soon-to-be public trillion-dollar companies, and developers are the product being fought over. For indie game developers specifically, this is a structural shift in the tools you rely on every day. Your AI coding agent, your model provider, your asset generation pipeline, they're all heading toward public markets. That's not necessarily bad. Public companies ship great products. They invest in reliability, documentation, and support. They have the resources to build features that startups can't afford. But it means you need to think about your tool stack as a set of business relationships, not just a set of technical choices. Here's a practical way to think about it. Right now, when you pick Claude Code as your coding agent, you're choosing the tool. When an Anthropic goes public, you're entering a business relationship with a company that has quarterly revenue targets. If they raise Anthropic prices by 20% to hit their margin goal, that's your problem. If they deprioritize the CLI agent in favor of the enterprise web dashboard because that's where the money is, that's your workflow disrupted. If they bundle features together in a way that makes the free tier useless for real work, that's your development environment changing overnight. None of this is hypothetical. We just watched Microsoft do exactly this with GitHub Copilot. 4 days ago, Copilot switched from flat rate pricing to token-based billing. Some developers saw their cost jump from $29 a month to $750. One user reported costs going from $50 to $3,000. Microsoft built Copilot as a loss leader, encouraged developers to use it heavily, and now they're pulling the rug. That's the playbook. Anthropic is heading down the same path. When the S1 goes public, and it will, probably within a few months, here's what to look for. Revenue concentration. How much of Anthropic's revenue comes from their top 10 customers? If it's heavily concentrated, a few enterprise losses could shift priorities fast. Customer churn. Are developers sticking around or are they cycling through and leaving? Compute costs. How much are they spending on infrastructure and is it growing faster than revenue? And margin trends. Are they making more money per API call over time or less? These numbers tell you where the product is heading. If margins are thin, expect price increases. If revenue is concentrated in enterprise, expect developer-facing features to get less attention. If compute costs are exploding, expect usage caps and tiered pricing to follow. If churn is high among small developers, they'll double down on enterprise lock-in rather than fixing whatever's driving devs away. And pay attention to one more thing, how much of their revenue comes from their own products versus the API. If most of their money comes from Claude Code subscriptions and Claude Enterprise contracts, that tells you the API is a cost center, not a profit center. Cost centers don't get investment. If most of the revenue comes from the API, then developers are the customer and the product will continue to serve you. The S1 will show exactly where the money flows, and that tells you everything about where the company is going. When Anthropic's S1 goes public, we'll be reading every page together inside AI Craft. Passing the revenue, the margins, the compute costs, and what it all means for the tools we use every day. Join the community and see what the filings actually say. Please feel free to subscribe and check out the links in the description below.